How's it going, my WBE people? Dr. Slacking, the Slacking Doctor, back with the weekly recap for Week 3 of the Shield Division. And unfortunately, for the first part of this video, I am going to be on my own. Jacob, as always, is going to take the second part of this video, much like we did Week 1. Unfortunately, we work on very different schedules in different time zones, so it's incredibly difficult for us to find a time to actually record together, especially by how quickly the turnaround is on these videos to get them out for you guys. So hopefully you guys understand. I'm sure that we'll both be fine covering the games on our own, but regardless, I'm also going to be live editing this video, so hopefully you guys are okay with that. It just cuts down the amount of editing work Jacob has to do once I send him the file. Yeah, and it's just the best way that we can get these things to the highest possible quality we can and out as quickly as we can for you guys. So hopefully you fully understand. But without wasting any more time rambling about stuff like that, let's jump straight into the action, because we had an incredible week this week in the Shield Division, and I want to talk first about our Battle of the Week. And this week we decided to give our Battle of the Week to the Durham Drudigans versus the Chicago Bouffalons, as 6 foot hacks took on the almighty Sacred. And this was a really interesting game. Leo has been in fine form to start this season, and Sacred's really impressed me too. I've been very impressed with how he's played. I think both coaches have had pretty positive starts, pretty bright starts, and a lot to look forward to this season from both of them. But we gave this game a game of the week despite it being a 4-0, just because of how well played I thought the early to mid game was in particular, and how good I thought Sacred's sets were despite him coming off as a 4-0 loser in this game. For example, he brought a Swords Dance Baton Pass Mienshao to pass +2 into his Mega Aerodactyl to apply offensive pressure with that. He brought Z Haze Tapu Fini to keep that thing around again. Second week in a row he's brought that kind of a set. He brought Ordino to pass Wishes into the Mega Aerodactyl, into Tapu Fini, into the Arcanine, the Electros to keep those alive. Electros was a really good pivot to keep him having momentum in the early game, as was Baton Pass Mienshao, and he actually kept the Baton Pass hidden for the early part of the game, not revealing that he could pass that +2 into the Aero. And I just thought he overall brought some great techs and really played them well and concealed them well, and was able to apply quite a lot of offensive pressure. However, his matchup against Reuniclus was pretty horrible, and as you can see on the screen in front of you, Reuniclus did pick up 4 kills in this game. But that really came down to Leo playing it so well. He had a few times where he almost could have lost it just trying to get damage off on the Mienshao, trying to trade 1-for-1, or where he could have tried to go for damage on the Mega Aerodactyl, trying to trade 1-for-1, or even the Tapu Fini. But he knew that it was his win con, and he kept preserving it throughout the match until eventually he actually brought it in on a really good double, baiting in the Ordino and then doubling out into Reuniclus to just set up and go for game. At that point, he knew they had enough Trick Rooms and stuff to really plow through with Trick Room, Calm Mind, and Psychic. Obviously, his Psychic being unresisted by the team that Sacred brought. I think that was definitely a bit of a problem. I think that maybe he needed something else to try and cover for that Reuniclus, but still. I also thought Leo played really well when he had things such as his Alola Muck in against the Tapu Fini. He realised that he'd forgotten Gluttony, a bit of a misbuild there, but he still managed to trap the Tapu Fini with Block, and just decided to pretty much trade 1-for-1 as the Alola Muck took out the Fini. And the reason that I thought that was such a good play, such a good tech bringing Block Alola Muck, is because that Tapu Fini could keep hazing the Reuniclus and was stopping it from ever getting off any Calm Mind sweeps. So again, Leo just playing really intelligently, knowing what things are worth swapping for what, and knowing what other things are worth preserving for later in the game. In general, he played really well with his Hazard game too. Both players did in this game, getting rocks up and down consistently, really trying to pressure each other in with a Hazard game. Both players missed high jump kicks, which was pretty horrific. The Mega Lopunny missing one that would have KO'd the Mega Aerodactyl and really freed up Leo's side of the field, and the Mienshao missing one that really sucked for Sacred as well. So yeah, in general, there was some hacks in this game, but it really got balanced out, and I just thought both players brought really intelligent sets and played really intelligently too, and Leo was fully deserving of his win. It is worth mentioning as well that Sacred scouted for the Z on the Reuniclus by going into Mega Aerodactyl, baiting out the Z, pivoting into Ordino, using his regen really well, and I thought that was an incredible play. I thought it was such an intelligent play to scout for that in an open Z format like this. You have to be so careful. He had seen with a knockoff from his Mienshao that it was going to be Z, so I thought that was a really intelligent use of that information that he gathered in the early game, and I was super impressed. Now, moving on from what was a quite close game despite the scoreline into a game that was much less close, as Envy and the San Diego Chimchargers took on Nate and his New York Noibats. This game was pretty tough for Nate. Nate has really impressed me in the first 2 weeks. I think he's been Game of the Week in the first 2 weeks in a row, despite being the loser in both of those, just by how well he's played, how close he's forced those games to be against very good opponents. But unfortunately this week, he decided to bring some really spicy heat with, I think, Electrium Z Thunder Punch Delphox plus Trick Room. And I think he was trying to pass curses from Sylveon with Curse Baton Pass into that Delphox to try and get like a Trick Room sweep with Delphox. Definitely heat. Definitely heat. But unfortunately in this game, Envy just applied offensive pressure so early that Nate never got an opportunity to even show any of those techs. He was just on the back foot from minute 1. So Envy basically led off with the Victini, got a good U-turn off on the lead Cloyster, which was a really nice hazard setting lead Cloyster. I quite appreciate seeing Cloyster in that role, with the Custat Berry on there as well. But the supportive Rotom on Envy's side was able to come in, defog Will-O-Wisp, and just entirely shut down the Cloyster in a really impressive fashion. Then Scarf Victini picked up a KO on Swellow when I think Nate wasn't necessarily expecting it to be Scarfed. Having seen Envy switch it out earlier on the Custap Cloyster, it seemed unlikely that Envy would be scouting for Custap, so I can see why he maybe thought it wasn't Scarf, but nevertheless, it was still pretty sad to see Swallow just get popped like that. And then after that, he went out into the Delphox on the now -1/-1 Victini. Seems like a safe enough play as Scarf Victini locked into V-Create. Can't do too much to Delphox. Went for the Trick Room, but I think that was a pretty crucial misplay, as then Envy was able to hard switch into Azumarill on the Trick Room and then pick up 3 KOs with Assault Vest Azumarill just going through Nate's team. It was really dangerous, really impressive set by Envy, and it did work here. The Trick Room from the Delphox just setting Azumarill up to destroy Nate's team. So yeah, pretty tough time from Nate. I don't think he ever quite got his positioning right after the first few turns, and then once that Azumarill was in the Trick Room, that was pretty much the whole game. He was pretty screwed from that point. So yeah, really impressive build by Envy. Like I say, putting that offensive pressure on early, picking up the early KOs, shutting down the Hazard stack lead on this offensive team, and then really just going in and did so being able to finish the game against Lucario on the final turn, switching in on a Crunch and then going for the Scarf close combat. So yeah, in general, really well played by Envy. I don't think Nate did too much wrong. I think he was trying to run some heat and just came up against an offensive build that didn't allow the heat to shine, and that happens sometimes. Regardless, moving on to the next game, we have one that was a little bit closer again, as Old Man Tup took on Patty Trills, the Pittsburgh Predators taking on the Sin City Scissors. And as you can see in this game, it was another 4-0, so not super close, but a little bit closer. And Tup, in his video, felt quite aggrieved over several Fire Blast misses with his mixed Tyranitar set. I think it was mixed from memory. Certainly it was a minor speed nature. I can definitely understand. I think he missed 3 Fire Blasts, and that really sucked. So I can 100% understand where he was coming from, feeling aggrieved with the RNG there. However, I thought Patty played superbly. Mega Alakazam had a fantastic matchup in this game, I thought, and Patty once again showed why Mega Alakazam is such an incredible threat in the draft format, especially a draft format like this, with so many coaches and so many drafts being so thin on the ground. Mega Alakazam can run Modest more often than not. It can just put so much pressure on an opponent's team. The Tyranitar being worn down, missing all those Fire Blasts, and getting chipped down very early, really opened up the Megazam just to click Psychic and kill things, essentially. There was definitely some unfortunate hacks on both sides, but I do think, on Tup's side, but I do think Tup also made some misplays, such as when he went for the Iron Head with the Scarf, Alone and Dugtrio into the Mega Alakazam. This comes back to something we discussed kind of in his Week 1 game, where he again over-predicted with the Alone and Dugtrio. I don't think that he predicted Patty to switch out, expecting him to know that Scarf, Alone and Dugtrio with Sandforce would OHKO Megazam. I don't think that if you're Patty, there's any guarantees that he's Scarf, there's any guarantees that he's Sandforce. You know, it's not necessarily a known set, Scarf, Sandforce, Alone Dugtrio, that you think to scout for. And I felt like he maybe could have just gone for the Quake and taken out the massive threat to his team in Mega Alakazam that went on to pick up 3 KOs from that point, and he could have just OHKO'd it there. So yeah, I feel like maybe another overprediction with the Alone Dugtrio, and after that his Megazam matchup was pretty rough. He also kind of misplayed with his Charizard X, getting a really nice KO on the Landorus, but then later on, when Patty no longer had an Intimidator to switch in, I think he should have just been firing off Dragon Claws and Flare Blitzes, but instead he went for the Dragon Dance and then the Dragon Claw into Seismitoad, which he knew he could never KO, and Patty was able to just pick off the Mega Charizard as it only got 1 kill in this game. I think the Mega Charizard was really, really scary for Patty to deal with. I think that switching into it was impossibly difficult for him. Once the Landorus went down, he no longer had that Intimidate. Well, he had the Incineroar too, but the Incineroar was going to take a Rock Chip if Rocks were up, plus it was going to get bopped by Mega Charizard. Seismitoad became the likely switch in once the Lando went down, and Seismitoad, without reliable recovery, without Intimidate, is going to be taking a whole lot if Mega Charizard is just firing off Dragon Claw after Dragon Claw. I did think that Tuck brought it in really well. He kept bringing it in hard on the Ferrothorn that was going for Stealth Rocks to get it in on aggressive plays. I thought that was fantastic. I just wanted him to be more aggressive and just firing off damage with it and prioritizing those hits over that setup. But in general, I was still impressed with both players, and Patty, again, continuing a really, really fine vein of form in this early season. Definitely a surprise package for me. I didn't know too much about him going into the season, but he's impressed me week after week, so that's really, really cool to see. And then moving into my final game for this week before I hand over to my co-host, I have Gator and the Florida Gators versus Galactic Elliott and his Chicago Cubchews, the second Chicago-based team of this week, in the Shield division at least. And Gator did emerge the 2-0 victor, which really, really impressed me because Elliott has been on a fine kind of run early season, back-to-back wins. He's got a very scary offensive team, quite bulky offense. And Gator's team, as I said in my week 1, I don't know, his draft just doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. But it doesn't seem to matter. He seems to have bounced back these last 2 weeks and put in some really good performances. I have to say it was amazing to hear him in better spirits at the start of his battle after he sounded pretty down and at the beginning of his week 2 game, pretty sick. To hear him proclaiming that he was the GOAT and saying that he was going to outplay at the beginning of his week 3 was pretty nice to hear. I enjoyed that. So it was nice to see him playing well again too. Archeops was really crucial in this matchup as he applied a ton of offensive pressure with it, taking out the Mega Ampharos early with a really cool lead Heatran set with Explosion teched on there, although it never got clicked. It was kind of like a pseudo anti-lead Heatran. It was a very, very weird but creative set. You don't often see those kind of dedicated lead sets in Draft League, or not as often as you do on the ladder, I think. So that was really, really fun to see. But being able to just Earth Power the Mega Ampharos for the 2-hit KO was super nice. Then in the late game, you had to be very, very careful of that Trick Room stack attacker. Elliott definitely kept his things alive, bluffing the Shuckerberry really, really well on the Archeops, and was able to apply some offensive pressure with his Trick Room in the late game. But Gator danced around very carefully, making sure that he didn't choke, keeping the Keldeo alive, using the berry on that pretty well, making sure that he also didn't lose the Scarf Chandelure. He was just covering all of his bases, making sure that absolutely there wasn't one set that could catch him out and beat him. And I was really, really impressed with that. A lot of players might have just gone for damage or not scouted or just sort of banked on it being one set or another. With seeing Trick Room, for example, he might have just discounted Scarf Chandelure, but he never did that. He never kind of gave into that temptation and instead stayed strong. I'm just realizing I made a typo on the Mega Heracross thing there, so I apologize for the error in the graphics. It's Mega Heracross this week, but never mind. Yeah, and in general, he just played the end game super well. I think that was a bit that impressed me. In the early game, they really just traded 1-for-1. Everything was just getting killed and then getting revenge killed. Gator kind of said that he just brought an offensive team and wasn't going to switch a lot. And Elliott really brought an offensive team too. And yeah, like I said, they just really traded 1-for-1 in the early game. And then it was Gator's ability to close out the end game that really decided this match here. Archeops and Keldeo being the MVPs, both playing a ton of offensive pressure to the other side. I do think once Mega Ampharos went down for Elliott, then Keldeo became really, really free. It was very difficult for him to switch into. Serena can switch in on Hydro Pumps, but it wasn't Scarf, I don't believe, so it was always going to underspeed and get bot by Fighting Coverage too. Chandelure can switch in on the Fighting Coverage, but if it gets hit with a Hydro Pump, it's going to be in trouble. So yeah, I think that Keldeo's dual stab here was really, really effective once the Mega Ampharos went down, and that was a worthwhile trade from Gator, just getting damage on it early with Heatran. Regardless, we had 4 fantastic battles for me to cover here today. Like I say, if you do want to check out any of these games, I would highly recommend the Battle of the Week. Watching that Reuniclus sweep is always good fun. I'm now going to hand it over to my co-host Jacob, who's going to cover the other 3 games. I hope you guys enjoy.
Hello WBE fans, my name is Jacob as always. Thank you to my co-host Dr. Slacking for doing 4 battles this week. I really appreciate that, man. It's just been a hectic week with the holidays and everything like that in America, so honestly, let's just get started with the action for WBE for the 3 games I'm going to be covering. First up, I'll be covering the Miami Dolphins, coached by Kyle A. versus Fanatax and his Atlanta Umbreons. This was a very, very fun and enjoyable game to watch. I really liked how both players played and prepped. Like, the way Kyle played, he brought some interesting sets. First, he brought like Brave Bird Mega Pidgeot, or physically offensive Mega Pidgeot, which is really neat. And then I think he just positioned himself really, really well late game to win with Kingdra. Like, Kingdra, I think, ended up getting like 4 kills and would have gotten 5 had it hit the last Draco Meteor. But Fantatax, or Christian, came back and unfortunately dodged the Draco Meteor to get the very, very narrow 1-0 win with Dragon Claw. However, I really think the game could have played a little bit differently on Christian's part. I feel like he could have won the game probably like 2 or 3-0 just because of the way he played around normal Diancie, not realizing that it got up to +4 because it got the 2 boosts with Diamond Storm rather than 1. And I don't think he realized that, so he thought his Earthquake with Flygon would KO like mid-game or something like that, and it didn't. He did live the Moonblast from Diancie because he was pretty bulky, but at the same time, like, he could have just played it around a lot better. Like, he could have went into his Lantern and just knocked it out after the Meloetta died because he was an offensive Lantern. There's just a few different things he could have done differently about the game. Either way, that was a very, very enjoyable game, and I enjoyed watching this between 2 fun coaches. And I really think Kyle, like, he's playing well, like, most of the season. It's just some things are not going his way, and it's just, I don't know. I think Kyle will bounce back strong. I think Christian, he just needs to be aware of what's going on a little bit better, like last week with the acrobatics thing with Archeops, and he did state that in the video. I like when coaches state things in their videos saying, hey, I could have done this better, hey, this is what went wrong. They're like acknowledging their mistakes in battle, and they're learning from it, and I think that's really crucial and key in Draft League, especially because you have to, like, Draft League is a very different beast from things like VGC and standard play, because you see a lot of the same things over and over again, especially in like Showdown Ladder. Draft League is completely different. Anything is possible. Pretty much any set can come, and you need to be prepared for as many sets as possible. And especially in WB, where any Pokemon can hold the Z Crystal, that's pretty spooky. So the possibilities are endless. So a very fun set that Christian brought was Agility, 3 attacks, I believe, Lantern with Electrium Z. I know it was Thunderbolt and Scald for sure, and Agility. I can't remember if he had Ice Beam or what the last move on was, but that was a phenomenal bring just because it destroyed Kyle's Rain Core. And if he did unfortunately bring Helios, which he did not, like, yeah, he would just had to try to knock it out first and foremost. But still, a very, very fun set from Christian bringing that. But Kyle brought some fun sets too. But anyway, it was a very narrow 1-0 win. Christian defeating the Miami Dolphins, led by Kyle A. Next up, the next game I want to talk about is the Under the Radar versus Jodor match. So the Seattle Sea Kings, coached by Jodor, facing the Maryland Terrapins, coached by Under the Radar. And Kelly has been on a tear. Like, I already knew going in that Kelly was one of the better battlers and preppers of WBE, but he's really impressed me because his team is pretty unorthodox. It's like there's some certain things, like there's barely any removal, it's just superior, there's no ground and poison type, and yet he's just coming in with the game plan, sticking to the game plan, and just destroying lives and doing super, super well. Like, he just, the team he brought against Joe was just like, Scarfed, he did some mocks. He realized Nasty Plat Infernape with like Fightinium Z is a big threat, so he's like, I need to change this to Scarf Darmanitan. This is not a very good thing if he brings this, and then I have no offensive check to it. So he changed his plan, and that's very good to note that. And in like prep especially, like, I don't usually do mocks or anything, but sometimes I do. But in mocks, like, you just have to realize, hey, this can be an issue. How do I deal with this if they bring this big set? And I really like that Kelly always has like a game plan, and he just sticks to it. Like, he wanted to get rocks up, and then he wanted to potentially Thunder Wave Pokemon with Mega Aggron, Toxic the Jellicent, and then potentially win with Z Hyper Beam Superior or Scarf Darmanitan or Banded Zygarde. So he had 3 different avenues of winning, and I just think that gives him a huge, huge advantage while prepping and everything like that. And I'm really impressed by the way, well, I've been impressed by the way Kelly brings, but it's just unfortunate like the way things go for Joe. Like I don't know if it's his prep or his team mostly, but I think he'll come back strong. I think he's gonna try to make some transactions, I'd imagine, to his team just to like change it up a bit and just see if that'll help him out a little bit. But either way, like I think Joe has the capability of doing well in this season, but I think it's mostly his team letting him down more so than him. Obviously, everyone can improve, like in general. Like there's no perfect player or anything like that, so everyone can always constantly improve. But I think Joe's team is letting him down more so than anything else, because it's just a difficult team to prep with, I would believe. Like just looking at it face value, there's not tons of wall breakers. There's not like tons of like wing cons or anything like that, where someone like Kelly's team has tons and tons of wing cons, or like has enough wing cons, and like it's just a different team. And I just wanted to talk about that, but I was really impressed with the Z Hyper Beam Superior and like just the way Kelly builds and plays and practices every single week. So I'll keep it up, and I expect Kelly to keep on rolling and doing well, but I really expect Joe to come back strong eventually as well next week. So that I don't know, it's just the pivotal turn of this match was probably him predicting groundium Haxers and just pivoting into Mesprit and letting it sack off, so then he can check it in with Darm, and it just did super well. And something that of Joe's end, if he were that set, he should probably have EV'd himself to live, depending on like an Adamant Scarf Flare Blitz from a certain range of health. That's something to note. But either way, Kelly looked really, really impressive here, winning 5-0 over the Seattle Sea Kings. I cannot remember the team name, but I was like, what happened again? But anyway, let's move on to the final match of the week, and that is going to be Cybertron VGC, aka Aaron, and his Melbourne Rotoms versus the Bristol City Blazikins, and led by Game Boy Luke. This was like a super interesting match, and not just because it was a 5-0 victory by the Bristol City Blazikins, the Game Boy Luke winning pretty convincingly over Cybertron. And I did like talk to Aaron a little bit after the match, like asking, hey, you could have done this a little bit differently with the sets, because he did reveal his sets at the beginning of the match, and I was like intrigued by that. I was like, okay, this is interesting. You can kind of see what he's doing and everything like that. And he had ran max speed Rotom Heat, so I was like, that's pretty interesting, because it doesn't really like running EVs the way some people do sometimes just isn't really too optimal. And I'm not trying to call him out or anything here. I'm just using this as an example as a whole. But having max speed in a Pokemon that doesn't really accomplish anything, like running max speed in Rotom didn't really make too much sense. And then just like running like Natural Gift Fire on Mamoswine, while good in theory, doesn't necessarily make tons of sense, because you don't really want to live an Adamant Bullet Punch from a Mega Scizor anyway. If you were there, more than likely you probably would have been pretty defensive to like help deal with Mamoswine and like Kartana. But like you still don't really want to take that hit necessarily, especially if he is a Swords Dance Mega Scizor. If like Kartana gets weakened, that's a pretty big threat to your team. Just like there's just certain things he could have done differently, and we addressed this and stuff already. But he definitely the insight was good, he said. But I don't know. It's just like the sets he brought were fine, but they just could have been improved on a little bit, if that makes sense. And like Grassium Kartana, when he had a Mega Scizor, was kind of conflicting. But I really like the sets that Game Boy Luke brought. He brought some fun. Like he brought a Metronome Primarina. So like, wow, like he's gonna like get confused by the damage, be like, oh, is that Specs or is that Pixie Plate, or like it's just gonna keep getting increased in power every single turn. He did bring special Landorus Eye this week, so I thought that was cool. He did bring another Chople Drampa, but it made sense because of Conch Elder. Glare is such a good move in general, I think, in Draft League format, because it's 100% Paralysis move, and we all know Paralysis is one of the most broken mechanics in Pokemon. So if you can run a Mon with Glare, like, oof, that's like pretty big. Like, just cuts their speed in half. the 25% chance to get fully paralyzed every turn. It's just like a silly mechanic that probably needs to be addressed in Gen 8. But like, I don't know, he just Luke just brought the correct team, and it was a really, really good team, well thought out team, I thought. So he did end up winning 5-0 over Aaron. I think one of the pivotal points of the match is like Aaron like not predicting as much as he should have, and like something that I really, really did enjoy was his post battle analysis of himself. I think that's really, really critical to be your own worst critic. Like if you can say, hey, this is where I went wrong, like you're doing something right, I feel. Just because like you should be your own worst critic, and that's how you want to improve. Like that's how you should want to constantly improve, unless you're just doing this for fun. Well, if you want to do well, like you want to be constantly improving and being critic, like that's what Christian did, I was talking about, and Aaron especially is doing that too. Like he just put key problems, he like literally made like a PowerPoint of the key issues of the game and what went wrong turn by turn, because it just made sense. He said he shouldn't have defogged, he should have just clicked HPIs for the 2-hit KO, and I definitely agree to that. Like there's just certain things he could have done. Like I love that when people are highly critical of themselves, that's how you improve it as a player. But yeah, sorry for the craziness that's been the last few weeks of doing the recap for the Shield division. Like Dr. Slacken said in his portion of the video, we've been like, we live in like we're like 7 hours apart, so it's kind of hard to get together within like the 3 or 4 days window that we have to do these. And we were gonna do this together on Tuesday night, but I had to stay like an hour or two later at work than I wanted to, because the boss was like, we need you to stay. Like I kind of have to stay, we're busy in a pharmacy, but I hope you guys can understand. But we really thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day. Take care, guys, and we'll see you guys next time. Hopefully, Dr. Slacking and I will be doing that together next week. Crossing my fingers that I can get out of work on time on Tuesday and not stay an hour or two later. But thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. Peace.